What's up, guys? Welcome back to Libertalia Game Supply. We're going to take a look at the Dark World deck I've been messing around with lately. I just recently picked up a few of the structure decks and was able to get some of the older stuff and some nice rarities, so I wanted to kind of mess around with it, see how I could build this thing. So we'll get right into it. I think for the most part this deck is fairly consistent in how it's built, and a lot of it is just messing around with ratios. So we got triple rainbow. If he's discarded, he can search a level 5 or higher, which is your Silva, your Grapha, just those two from your deck to your hand. And then if he's in the graveyard, you can bounce a level 7 or lower back to your hand to special summon him, so similar to Grapha there. He's a level 8 also, and he's got a pretty big attack, so you can use him for rank 8 plays. You can use him just as an extra 3,000 or more attack on the board, and you can use him to search whatever you need. Then we got the triple Grapha, the original boss monster. It does the same thing. You can special summon it from the graveyard by returning a Dark World monster you control to your hand, so that's any of them. It doesn't have to be 7 or lower. And if it gets discarded to the graveyard, you can pop a card your opponent controls. All of them have an effect that activates if it's discarded by an opponent's card effect, which isn't super relevant unless we're doing the Cerulli effect to put it on their side of the field, and then you discard one and you get that effect. But more often than not, I'm looking to use Silva for that, so those second effects are mostly irrelevant. We got triple snow. If it gets discarded, it can just search a Dark World card from your deck to your hand, so this is really one of your best cards to see in your opening hand as long as you have a discard outlet available, because it can just get you to any of the other cards you need in your deck, which is super necessary. This deck is largely based around like getting lucky with random card selections. So like obviously we play a huge danger engine here, and most of the time you're just like pounding the stone over and over again with dangers, trying to get the right discards, or trying to get Gates of Dark World on the field so that you can choose your discard, or like number 60 or something like that. So just having a search outlet right away is pretty important. We got triple Genta. Kind of the same deal. So this thing, you can discard it and it'll search your Gates of Dark World, so super necessary. And then if it gets banished, it can special summon itself to your field. This is relevant because it's a level 4, and that rank 4 Dugaris, that number 60, is a really big first turn play for me. And so by discarding it and searching Gates, you now have a Fiend in graveyard for Gates' effect. You can activate your Gates. You will likely have another Fiend in hand, and you can activate the Gates. You get the draw, you get the effect off of whatever you discarded out of your hand, and you get the special summon off of Genta. So it's usually enough to put enough monsters on board to either like link summon, maybe like Akashik to bounce your Cerulli back, or make Dugaris or whatever to just continue play. So 3 is really good. We got double Silva. If it's discarded, it special summons itself. If it's discarded by your opponent's card effect, your opponent has to take 2 cards from their hand and put them on the bottom of their deck in any order. So it's a hand rip, and you can loop this pretty easily with Akashik Magician and Cerulli. So ultimately you're going to discard Cerulli, special summon it to your opponent's side of the field. Cerulli's effect will activate to you. You are going to then discard your Silva, special summon the Silva. They got to drop 2 to the bottom of their deck. Make Akashik bounce the Cerulli back to hand, and then you can do it twice, which then would, if you're going first, drop your opponent down to 1 card in hand plus the one they draw, and you're pretty much winning that unless it's some unbelievable 2 cards that they have, which is unlikely. We got the double brow. If it's discarded, you get to draw 1. So this is like if there's not anything in particular I'm searching for, but I just want bodies in hand, I'll discard it off of Gates. You get the draw off of Gates, you get the draw off of brow, so it's like a pot of greed essentially. I was playing 2 for a while, but it just didn't do anything other than being that extra draw card, which I like, but 3 of them just ended up being too much, because if you have multiples in your hand, they're usually not super useful. The 1 Cerulli for the hand loop, and then the 1 beige, just because this deck I focused a little bit more on being able to make that Dugaris turn 1, so it's a level 4 that when discarded special summons itself. So if it comes up in your hand, it's just another way to get a free level 4 on board. Usually you're not burning your normal summon either, so even if you only have a way to special summon one of your 4s, you can just normal summon the other one, and you still can go with that Dugaris play. The 1 Salamander Catalyzer, I think this is a pretty common tech now. You can reveal it in your hand, and then 1 other Fiend monster in your hand. Then you can special summon one of them and then discard the other one. So I usually will special summon this because it's a 4, and then when you get the discard off of his effect, you get that effect from that Dark World monster that you discarded, and it's a level 4 on board. Also, if it's in the graveyard, and a fiend monster you control is destroyed by battle, you can add it back to your hand. So then it becomes another free discard. And I think that's the biggest thing. The level 4 thing is, it's nice because I really like being able to make that Dugaris as quick as possible because I really like that effect. But the fact that it can put itself back in your hand and be essentially a free discard outlet every turn to try to get plays started just makes it so good. And then for our dangers, I went with 3 Chupacabra because it's the level 4, and also if it ends up discarding itself or if it gets discarded by some other way, it can special summon one of your dangers out of the graveyard. So after a couple plays or even the next turn, it becomes like a monster reborn, or it summons itself plus that draw one, so it's a pretty good danger. The one Thunderbird, it's a level 8. Its effect to pop a set card can be relevant, I suppose, if you end up having to discard it, but I didn't really like it enough to play more than the one. Triple Bigfoot, also level 8. If it discards itself or if it gets discarded, you can pop a face-up card, so it's like the opposite of Thunderbird. It's removal for threats that you are aware of, which is usually what you're going to be going after. You're not really going to be looking to blind MST essentially stuff, so that's why this ratio is the way that it is. Triple Nessie, this is by far the best one. If it gets discarded, you can just add a danger card from your deck to your hand, so you use it, hopefully you're discarding a Dark World and special summoning it. Even if it gets discarded, you just get a new danger and you just do it again. So that's what I was talking about earlier. You're just pounding the stone. You're just trying to keep going and keep going until you get the discards you want, and then once you get it to all kind of start lining up, this deck just goes insane. It's very explosive. The one Tsuchinoko and the one Jackalope to finish up the dangers there, and then for the spells. So the one Triple Tactics Talents, one is nice because if you have it, you have it. It's really easy to draw into this stuff off of your Triple Allure, your Gates, your Browse, your whatever. So having it in your hand and then going Cerulli Loop means that you're giving your opponent a monster on their whatever turn. So ideally going first, you're giving them a monster that uses an effect turn 1, and then you can activate your Triple Tactics Talents turn 1 to get your draw 2 or whatever, but it's going to be your draw 2. So this is a nice little tech. It works really well in this deck specifically, so I've been enjoying that. Double Dark World Ascension. This is your fusion spell to make the Dark World fusion monster. I've bounced between 2 and 1 of the spell and the monster in the extra deck just to make room. I've summoned 2. I don't know that you necessarily will need to summon 2 all the time, but this guy's effect is pretty cool, so having an option for 2, I guess, isn't the worst. It also can act as a free discard outlet, so once you've used it and it's in your graveyard, you can put it back in your hand to discard a Dark World monster. So you're essentially, you can do it in the same turn. So you can activate it, fusion summon, put it back in your hand, discard one to get an effect. You can't fusion summon again, so that's why you would play the 2 and the 2 rather than like 1 and 2. But having that forced discard and then just being another card in hand for, maybe you're trying to get a danger to summon itself. It's just like adding to your odds of making those effects go off. Triple Gates of Dark World, this thing is crazy good. So all fiends gain 300 attack and defense, and then once per turn you can banish a fiend monster from your graveyard, discard one from your hand, and draw a card. So we've talked about Genta, gets that effect off of being banished. If no Genta, then you just banish whatever, because a lot of the littler ones you won't really need after you've gotten their effects the first time. And then that discard is pretty much always going to activate as an effect once it hits the graveyard anyway, plus that draw. The thing about this that makes it really busted is that it's a once per turn effect, but you can just activate a new one and do it again. So really you could do it 3 times in one turn, and if you end up pulling that off, which is fairly consistent, it's very possible to get at least 2 and even up to 3 in a turn, as long as you kind of get lucky with your draws and your dangers and whatever, you pretty much are winning that game because of how much graveyard fixing, effect selection you have. It's just a really good card. Then we got the Triple Allure. It's just a amazing draw card in this deck. Draw 2, banish a dark. You guys know how it goes. And then for our extra deck, we got 2 of the Grapha Dragon Overlord of Dark World. This is the fusion that the Dark World Accession summons. And what it does while it's on the field is if your opponent activates the effect of a monster or a normal spell or trap, you can change that card's effect to your opponent discards 1 card, meaning you would be discarding 1 card. So it takes away a big effect that you would like them to not have, and then it also generates you advantage by allowing you to, force a discard of one of your monsters. So especially it will likely be on your opponent's turn that you're using this. if you're able to force that discard and the discard be a Grapha, you take away their effect and pop a monster, it can just generate some really nice advantage there. Also, if it gets destroyed, it can special summon a Grapha back from the banished or the graveyard. So you can banish that Grapha off of gates and not really have to worry about it as like needing it for other fusion material, because if your fusion monster dies, you can just special summon it back. And then we got the Drag Lubion package, so the number 97, the number 100, and the number 38. I really like getting this number 38 on board just to take away spells. It's kind of a similar thing to this, just being able to take away big effects that are going to let them get back into the game. You need to have an option for that. We got the one Coach King Giant Trainer. It does good burn damage. It is also a crazy good draw card. I don't summon it super often because it's 3 level 8s and you kind of got to commit a lot of resources to that. And I've been liking Saryuja a little bit better in this deck rather than this card, but it's still a really good option. The one Dweller to shut off graveyards, the one Exciton because it's a fiend, so it gets that attack boost, I guess, from gates. And it is relevant in other interactions for like things like this that need to be the same type and whatever. And that board wipe also is just one of my favorite extra deck cards of all time, so I try to fit it in where I can. The one Dugaris, so this thing is one of my favorite like turn 1 combo pieces, like main power plays. So it's just 2 level 4s. It's also a fiend, and it has a couple of effects, but the one that I will always use, and probably you as well if you're playing this card, is you detach 2 materials, and then draw 2 cards and discard 1. So it's a draw 2, and the discard 1 is usually not a problem because you're getting effects off of it. So you draw 2 and you're essentially getting, a new 5-card hand with like every couple of plays in this deck. And you're just making selections of, alright, I need this, this, and this to go for the Cerulean hand loop. I need this, this, and this to put some 8s on board to make Giant Trainer or number 38 or whatever. So it's just a really good card for like setting up whatever it is that you're going to try to end your board at, and then just going off from there. And then the one Akashic, this is so you can bounce your Cerulean and your Silva back to hand. So you would want to summon the Cerulean on one side of the extra monster zone. You can't see what I'm doing. And then you would want to summon your Silva directly across from it, and then you put the Akashic in the middle when you summon it, and it just bounces them both back to your hand, and then you can hit them again for that other 2. So that's the only reason this is here. The one Masquerena, usually I would set this up if it's turning into a little bit more, or I expect it to be more of a grind, so like game 2 or game 3, I would put this on board expecting to use it to summon the Underworld Goddess in order to take one of their monsters away. Otherwise, I'm usually not link summoning a whole lot. A lot of them are a lot more beneficial to not, like they're reactive cards, so it would either be the Goddess or it would be the Unicorn to bounce something or whatever. So the one Unicorn, we got the double Saryuja. This thing is super good in this deck. I'm always trying to summon it with the 4 because then you get that effect to draw 4 cards and then put 3 on the bottom of your deck. Kind of the same as Dugaris. We're just trying to fix a hand so that we can go in whatever certain direction. So it's kind of like you'll have a bunch of different pieces to start unless you open really well in one necessary direction. With this, you can, essentially you're going to be looking at like 6 to 8 cards or something, and then you can just pick the ones that you want to keep and put the rest back in the deck. So it's really good at just setting you up for being able to make big plays. So usually I'll go into the Dugaris, hopefully into the Ceruli loop, use the Dugaris to make the Akashic, and then put a couple bodies on board to make the Saryuja to get a big hand, pick some good stuff, and then I'm trying to end my board with Saryuja plus some whatever good stuff I was able to pull out of the deck with its effect. And then the one Underworld Goddess, it kind of acts as removal, being able to use one of your opponent's monsters as material. Also on Link Summon, it can negate everything on your opponent's side of the field that's face up. And then if an effect is activated that will special summon a monster from the graveyard, you can negate the activation. So it's got some good effects on it. It's mostly just removal. Plus it's a fiend, so it gets that attack boost off of gates. So it's a 3300 body most of the time. It's just a pretty good card. But anyway, that's the deck profile for this week. I'm sorry it was a couple days late. I've been busy with getting some stuff kind of sorted out in my personal life. I will actually share some of that with you pretty soon. A little update on the channel. But happy deck building. I'll see you guys in the next one.